Hello everyone, my name is Victor Armstead. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of The Parker Daniels Show.
Welcome to another edition of The Parker Daniels Show. I am somebody like Jesse Jackson used to say, but not for real. I am Anthony Parker. And today's guest is Ashley, all the way from Ontario, Canada. And she is visually impaired, but she classifies herself as being blind. Is that right, Ashley, so far? Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, before we get started with the topic, I want to make sure to tell y'all to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, make sure that you give me some thumbs ups. Whatever it takes to make this channel move forward, I need your support. Now, today's topic, we're going to be dealing with, I'm working on a series of focusing on individuals, visually impaired individuals, that is, in other countries. We're going to get people's perception on how their treatment is, or if there are any accessibilities that they have for individuals who are visually impaired or blind. And we're going to talk about the unemployment or employment rate, if there is one, and just a lot of things that we're going to delve into by talking to my girl Ashley. So since I got that out of the way, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Now, this is your show. I want you to give us some insight into your life, such as where you from. As I mentioned, you from Ontario, Canada, but you might be from other places because you have an accent, a girl. Conditions, things like that. So this is your show. Let me turn the music down a little bit. So take over and let us know about yourself.
Okay, awesome. So generations ago, our family actually immigrated from Scotland, Ireland. So if you hear a tiny bit of an accent, that's where it came from. And so I was born in Canada. And after I was born, my parents moved to the States for a short period of time. And then we moved back to Canada. So I've been primarily living in Canada. And I lived a semi-normal childhood, you know, with its ups and downs like everybody else.
Right.
I was not born with any visual problems. I was a preemie, but outside of that, I was a normal healthy child. When I was 12, I started getting incredibly sick with really bizarre symptoms, and one day I would be perfectly fine, and then the next day I'd be so sick I could not get out of bed. And that went on for about 2 years.
Really?
And then after 2 years, I was diagnosed a week before my 14th birthday with lupus, which is an autoimmune disease.
Okay.
So my life was very, very impacted by that because it's a life-altering disease. There are a lot of changes that are going on in the body, and there's a lot of things outside the body that just affects your overall health. And so in my case, I ended up being extremely allergic to the sun. And to this day, I have to be very, very careful when I am out in the sun. And so I had to battle and deal with that during my teenage years. And I'm thankful for the experience because I have learned how to cope with life's ups and downs, sometimes more downs than ups, to be honest.
Okay.
Sometimes that happens in people's lives. And outside of that, I didn't really have much problem with my sight. 1 second, I'm going to just get a sip of water. I'm sorry.
Take your time. This is your show, girl. You do whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
Okay. So,
now you told me about an impairment that is rare. The eye condition is very rare. Do you want to expound on that?
Yes. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I had to get reading glasses for no reason. They could not see a problem with my eyes and sent me to the ophthalmologist. And he noticed that behind my left eye, the left eye looked very different, but there wasn't necessarily an issue or a condition that he could pin it on. It just looked different than the normal eyeball. And, excuse me.
That's okay.
And So he said, you will lose some sight, but he goes, it's going to be a little bit. And so we didn't really think anything more of that. And slowly, after the following years, I lost my distance, being able to see distance. And it was so slow I didn't notice it. So when I was 25, which was about, by the time when I was 25, I started losing considerable amount of sight. And by the time I was 26, I was legally blind. And so I went for a year and a half without any diagnosis. I was going to specialists, I was going to doctors, and it was incredibly frustrating not having an answer because my physical eyeball looks healthy. It looks normal, it looks healthy, it doesn't look like there's a problem. My brain, where the nerves are attached and the part of the brain that deals with sight, it's perfectly healthy, and they couldn't find anything wrong with that. And so after much testing, they found out that I have a disruptance of my bilateral optic nerve, which has only affected reported cases of 13 people worldwide.
Wow. Wow.
So that means there is no cure on the way as of yet.
Really?
Because they're too busy trying to solve, the problems of the masses,
okay,
right?
Okay. So with that being said, how much can you see as we move forward? How much can you see, or can you see it all?
So my eyesight continues to get worse. Every time I go back, they find that it gets worse. And my left eye, I actually do not know when I went completely blind in my left eye because I was so busy doing tests, and I became more focused with the eye that actually could see. So my left eye is completely blind. I used to have light perception in it, but I don't anymore. And then my right eye, it still has light perception, but it's losing its color perception. And I can see about 4 or 5 inches away.
Wow.
But it is so blurry that I cannot make out. You could hold your hand up in front of me, I could tell something is there, but
right, but you can make out what it is.
That it's your hand.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So thanks for informing us of that, because that's very important. The nature of the topic, and we're going to focus on the second tier of the conversation, which is dealing with in visually impaired people in your country. Are there many visually impaired people in Canada? The percentages or anything like that? Or there may be a question that may be like a little bit ludicrous, but I just want to know: are there many people who are like blind, visually impaired, things of the nature in Canada?
Well, for me as a sighted person, I really did not give much thought to blind people in Canada, and I think that really does tell something about it. I do feel over the last maybe 10 years, I think there's been a lot of awareness raised for blind people or visually impaired people, because when I'm out with my cane, people know that I'm blind. I did have one instance when I was out walking in my community, and there was an elderly gentleman who had asked me, he goes, "What are you doing? Is that a metal detector?"
Really? So,
yes.
So would you equate that to the fact that there's not enough awareness for him to ask a question like that? Because that was very ludicrous. Do you think that there's not enough awareness?
Well, I was trying to figure it out because, he did sound elderly, and my mom had seen him from our yard, and so she said he was older. And I do notice because I perform, and a lot of the areas that I focus on is in seniors' homes and seniors' residences, and a lot of them have a really hard disbelief that as young as I am, I have vision problems.
Wow. So, they don't understand that things like that can happen. So, understanding that, you were, by you being sighted at some point, you really didn't focus too much on the visually impaired community, but now that you are visually impaired, quote unquote, how is it as far as the treatment, the employment? If you can answer that, the employment rate, because here in the United States, there's a high unemployment rate because a lot of people are skeptical about hiring individuals who can't see and things of that nature because of the risk. But what is it like in Canada as far as that, and as well as the equipment or any type of devices and things that are needed for individuals who are visually impaired? Can you expound on that, Ashley?
I can for sure. So Canada does have different corporations, and our government does have few things in place to try and help people out. There is a thing in Ontario. It's called the Ontario Disability Support Program, which it offers financial support. Now, this is for people who have a illness, such as, maybe they have an autoimmune disease, or they have different things like that that really impacts their life and their ability to attain and keep work. And it is a great resource because it keeps people off of the streets and out of homeless shelters, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of dispute about the availability of how much income per month, the limitation of what medicines are covered under that health program, and like the basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that available that does help pay for some different things for sight. And we do have another program called CNIB, and it's Canada's National, sorry, I'm not saying that right.
Take your
Canadian
time.
National Institute for the Blind.
Mm-hmm.
And I use their services, and I find their services are very, very good. I'm very thankful and grateful that there is that service available. I do have found that sometimes I feel like you still have to think outside of the box because, for instance, brushing my teeth. Having been someone that had sight and lost it, brushing my teeth became a challenge, trying to get toothpaste on the toothbrush.
Mm-hmm.
And, I either ended up looking like a little kid with toothpaste all over my hands and all over me, or it was all over the bathroom. And their solution was to put the amount that I wanted to use on my finger and then pop it in my mouth and brush my teeth.
Exactly.
And so that was a great example for them, but it was still inside the box because for me, I felt like I was putting a dead slug in my mouth, and it just grossed me out every time I tried to do it. And so when I complained about that, I was told, okay, well, you just have to get used to it. And I thought, well, why do I have to get used to something that I feel is really gross and I don't want to do it? So there are some things where it helps if you think outside of the box. But so there are corporations. The employment is very, very low.
As far as
unfortunately, a lot of yeah, exactly.
You said the employment rate for the hiring of individuals who are impaired is very low?
Yes,
okay.
I've noticed that there are some places online, I think there's even a YouTube channel that I was listening to at some point, where, they were boasting about these people who had these full-time jobs. And when you try and inquire of how many people are actually having a full-time employment, because when you look into it, it's someone who's been employed for like 2 hours a week or 5 hours a week.
Yep.
No one can live on 2 or 5 hours a week of work, right?
That's right.
So I've been very, very lucky because I've been playing piano since I was 4, and so I started working for music studios before I lost my sight. And they very graciously kept me on while I was working and while I was losing my sight because they could see what I could do. I had the books memorized. I got so good at using my ear that I could even tell when the student was playing with the wrong finger. And so I was kept on in these places. And but I was one of the exceptions because
and let me stop you right there. That was going to be my next question in terms of your status, in terms of you being able to work and what have you, but you've taken the bull by the horns and have answered that. So continue. That's what I really wanted to ask you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, I'm one of the exceptions because not everybody has the opportunity to have been doing music since they were little, right? So for me, I was lucky in that sense, and then I also I make things by hand and sell them. But again, that is an opportunity that is kind of explicit to me because I've been doing that again since I was 4. So people who have these amazing jobs, when you look into their lives, you find out that, like in my case, I don't even have full-time work because I have other health issues as well. Right. But I have friends who are visually impaired who have better sight than me. They live in towns that have more work that would be available for them, and they are still unemployed and have been unemployed for 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
So the unemployment rate is really low, and I kind of get annoyed with some of these corporations that like to boast, we help people obtain work, or we can tell you these success stories, and I'm like, okay, you can tell us these like, success stories, but then like one instance I found out like this man, he got a job because his father got him this job. So he really has that because he had a connection.
Right.
Or someone else had a job because, you know, their parents had lots of money and very affluent. And in my case, that wasn't the case for me.
I understand that.
A lot of
I said, I understand that wholeheartedly. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm finding that there's a lot of discrepancies about people who have full-time work and, you know, they're saying about equality. And there is not equality yet. Our world is working on that. Our society and culture is working on having that equality, but it's still not there. You know, we boast, you know, everyone's equal, equal rights, no matter what your ability or disability is, but we have yet to see the proof of that boast. So
there's been a similarity. There are some similarities as you know, there are, you know, I mean, in the United States and whatnot. So because I mean, believe me, like as I mentioned earlier, employers are not really apt to, you know, hire individuals who are impaired because of the risk. But with that being said, as we come to a conclusion, do you read Braille? Do you is there organizations or a place that you can go to get mobility training or computer training there in Canada?
Yes, the CNIB, they set me up with learning Braille. I actually learned with an instructor that she came to my house and she taught me Braille, and I'm still working on the short forms. My memory is not the best for learning all the short forms, but I can do Braille by hand or with a Perkins Brailler.
I had one. You know, believe me, and that's you know, a lot of people are getting into the more advanced. You know, even though I'm there as well, but I'd rather, you know, go old school with the Perkins Brailler because you're never gonna go wrong. So it's good to know that you. And then I have heard people talk about, do you think it's good to still read Braille? Yeah, I learned Braille. Yes, because you never know what may happen, you know, as far as technology and whatnot. You know, so it's just best to have. I definitely recommend that though. But with that being said, I really enjoy you were a mouthful of information that you provided, definitely. And I want to let the people know that there is a part 2 to this interview. It's going to be something totally different. I ain't going to give the information away, but definitely I want to cover that as well. But before I conclude, tell everyone, give them something positive to go on, and tell them why they should subscribe to the Parker Daniel Show and all that good stuff.
Okay, something positive. I know this is going to actually sound totally opposite. The reason I started my YouTube channel was because a lot of other people that have YouTube channels and that are blind, they really portray it as like rainbows and unicorns, and they would never choose anything different. And that was not the way for me at all. I was actually very discouraged by, you know, maybe I didn't cope as well as they did. I'm not sure. So, because no one talks about having to give up dreams. You hear all these motivational speakers.
Is there any way I can stop you in your interview? Because
sure.
what you just said, man, if you were right here, I'd give you a big hug. Because for fear of hate, I just keep it at that. I'm glad that you said what you said, because I noticed that wholeheartedly. But I'll leave my opinion to say. I love what you just said. Go ahead. I agree with you.
Okay. So, you know, I wanted to start a YouTube channel to be real and be like, you know what, there are going to be days that you're going to say, you know, I am so over being blind.
Yep.
Or you're going to say, you know, I wish I had never lost my sight. And I just want to say, you know what? These hurdles come in through our lives. These trials come in through our lives. And, you know, we all know the sayings, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
You know, we know all that stuff, you know. Like, I grew up in church. You know the saying that God is good all the time. And, yeah, it's easy enough to say that, but it's really, really hard to believe it when you're having a really, really hard time. And what I want to say is just take each minute as it comes. You do not have to be or prove yourself to be super strong. If you need a moment to go cry, go cry. Our society that pushes that you need to hide all these feelings and emotions, I don't know where they get that from, because you know what? A strong person that can say, you know what? I'm having a really hard time right now. I need to go to my room and cry for about 5 minutes. You know what? You're going to feel better after that 5 minutes because you've let yourself express to yourself and accept your downtime. So you need to accept those times that you're down and acknowledge and say, you know what? I'm really down right now, and know that it is going to get better, and know that, you know, just as long as you're still putting your one foot in front of the other, it's going to work out. It's may not work out as fast as you want, but it's going to work out. And you're going to look back and go, oh, wow, I didn't see how that was working together and how that was working out in my favor. So I think part 2, you'll be able to see a little bit more of what I'm talking about, and looking back and seeing, oh, wow, it's amazing how that worked out.
Definitely. So we're not going to spoil them and give them anything, but I want to allow you the chance to pub your YouTube channel, and then we're going to be out, because I don't want the audience to be like, that's too long. But I mean, it's good, some good information though, for real. I mean, I just sat back and I was just really listening. But I thought I talk a lot and you know, can go on and on, but you were spitting some good stuff. So tell them the name of the channel, and I'm going to put it in the link, because you're going to send it to me, and y'all better support, please, because this is a good person. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I have a Facebook page and a YouTube channel, and it's really easy to remember. Your Canadian Black Girl, real original. So you could go over, you could give some of my videos thumbs up or even thumbs down. I love people's positive and negative feedback, and see how that goes. Okay.
Well, stay tuned for part 2. Thanks, Ashley, for coming to the show. And to the audience, please remember to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can get updates on good information such as this. So with that being said, Ashley, thank you once again, and I'm out.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.